Our second speaker now is going to join us via Zoom. Again, the topic will be Tayeb Salih's non-fiction. So, Professor Abdelmagid Abdelrahman Awadelkarim.
Well done.
Shukran. I speak Arabic with a Luxembourgish accent.
All the better.
So our speaker is an associate professor in the English department at Mignon University. That I couldn't pronounce that well. In Saudi Arabia, he teaches subjects ranging from linguistics and English as a foreign language to discourse analysis, social linguistics, literary criticism, and eco-linguistics. He has taught at universities in Sudan and in Saudi Arabia, and has published widely, presenting at national and international conferences. A journalist, poet, and literary critic, his research spans discourse studies, social pragmatics, language acquisition, cognitive linguistics, ecolinguistics, intertextuality, and contemporary trends in language education and literary criticism. He is also the author of Test and Discourse, the Dialectics of Readings and Meaning. And today he will be speaking of Defamiliarising the Familiar, City Representation in Tayeb Salih's non-fiction writing, an eco-critical approach. Welcome, Abdelmagid. We're very sorry not to have you here in person.
No problem. Thank you very much. Technology has solved the problem. First of all, let me just give a word of gratitude to the University of Oxford and the college, the Faculty of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, St. Antony's College, and the Sudanese Programme for holding the conference, and for also giving us this opportunity to address the conference. My paper is in line with Mr. Adel non-fiction, and I really agree. I am glad that he has touched on this neglected area of Tayeb Salih's writing. And in fact, I agree with most of his said about the fact that Tayeb Salih's fiction and non-fiction are widely merged together, and it is hard to find the demarcation line between the two, because the writer always employs fiction elements and imaginative elements in whatever he writes. And of course, perhaps that is why he is one of the greatest writers, not only Sudanese writer, but also among the greatest of all time. My paper will be about, of course, the paper is still evolving, and many of the strategies that the writer has employed in the representation of the cities have not yet been identified and explored, but will be as the paper unfolds. It's about city representation in Tayeb Salih's non-fiction. And of course, most of the anthology, the selected writings of Tayeb Salih's non-fiction, the 10, have not been translated yet. They are still waiting impatiently for translation, Ustaz Adil, especially the cities, number 3 and number 4. And so the two books that I am going to talk about are called Cities Representation in Tayeb Salih's Non-Fiction Writing, Defamiliarization and an Eco-Critical Approach. That I will be guided by two theoretical frameworks. That is the defamiliarization concept and the eco-criticism paradigm. What is defamiliarization, or what is estrangement? This is, as the name might suggest, it is to make the familiar unfamiliar, to make the familiar strange, unusual. The historical development of this, the concept was first mentioned by the Russian formalist Shklovsky in 1917 in his famous article, Art as Technique. And perhaps this is one of the most focal and important contribution of Russian formalism, especially this article, Art as Technique. Because as you know, the Russian formalists were very much concerned about what is it that makes a literary text literary? What is it that makes it artistic and beautiful? The idea was also taken up later by the German dramatist Brecht in what he called estrangement effect, the estrangement effect, or the defamiliarization effect, or sometimes it is also called the distancing effect, in his famous epic theater in the 1930s, in which he managed to transform modern drama in a very significant way. The Brecht opposed the Aristotle's concept of catharsis. In Aristotle's concept, in Aristotle's terms, catharsis is when the viewers are immersed in the plays and so much that they forget about the play. They forgot that it is a play in the first place. And this is what is called purification of emotion, emotional cleansing. The viewers get rid of their negative feelings, of their emotions, through this immersion, and through forgetting about the fact that it is already a play. These are just actors. It is acting. Brecht wanted the viewers to distance themselves from the actors in order to be able to think critically about the play and the actors. And that's what he calls breaking the fourth wall. And one of the techniques for this is to make the familiar unfamiliar through this breaking of the fourth wall. Of course, the idea of defamiliarization can also be found with other writers. For example, also the Roman Jakobson, the famous linguist and literary critic, and he's also one of the founders of Russian formalism in the Moscow Circle of Linguistics, that is Roman Jakobson, in what he calls the 6 functions of language. He identified 6 functions of language, which he said the referential function, the emotive function. Referential is about the context. Emotive is usually connected to the addressor. And the phatic function, which is just for socialization, it's what he calls checking the channel. When the speakers are not actually communicating any information, they are just like in the greetings, they are expressing socialization rather than information. And number 4 is the metalingual function, and that is language about language, or what is also called checking the code. Just as in linguistics or in literary criticism, we use language to talk about language. And then number 5 is what he called the connotative function, and that is about the addressee. And lastly, the poetic function, which is very much related to this idea of defamiliarization, in which language is not just used as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. The message is an end in itself. And this idea is also consistent with Halliday's functions. Halliday is a famous linguist, famous for his theory about systemic functional linguistics. He also identified 7 functions of language: instrumental, regulatory, interactional, personal function, heuristic function. And then number 6 is the imaginative function, which is also consistent with Jacobson's poetic function, and then the representational function. The idea of literariness, or making the familiar unfamiliar, can also be found in many ways in other paradigms in the history of literary criticism. For example, in the 1940s, the literary scene was very much dominated by new criticism. And the new criticism emphasized the centrality of the text, what they called close reading. And they are famous of 2 important ideas: fallacy of intention and affective fallacy. Fallacy of intention is the fact that they ignored the intention of the writer. They said the intention of the writer is not important or does not determine the meaning of the text. And also, they also reject the idea of the impressive or impression in reading, the affective, what they call the affective fallacy, the reader's role in reading, in giving meaning to the text. These 2 works, Tayeb Salih's work, whether fiction or non-fiction, can best be informed by the theory of defamiliarization or estrangement. The cities, for example, his cities that we enjoy reading are never the same cities that we see and live in. These cities are presented as if we knew them for the first time. They are so new and so stunning, so beautiful and unfamiliar. And in fact, they are being presented as enormously beautiful. So when you read these cities, you feel as if even if you know the city and you live in it, it is actually being given to you in a new way, as if you see it for the first time. So here, the familiar becomes unfamiliar. The ordinary turns into extraordinary. The second framework is eco-criticism. And eco-criticism is one of the most important movements in the 21st century. Actually, it started it goes back to the 1970s, but has not been developed until in a very significant way until it is in the late 90s and then the beginning of this century. It's a actually interdisciplinary approach about the interrelationships between exploring the interrelationships between literature, culture, society, and the environment, in the sense of that the ecosystem, so the relationship between the literature and the ecosystem. In fact, also ecosystem, the eco-criticism is also studied as part of ecolinguistics, and they have more or less been developed in the same way during the same period in the 1970s, and then advanced in the beginning during the beginning of this century. Both of them were actually developed during this period. As for eco-criticism, it can be traced back to Joseph Mika in 1972, and then the term itself was first coined by William Ruckert in 1978. But it is now considered eco-criticism as part of the 21st century movement in literary criticism. Also notable is the contribution of Grotley and Fromm, the eco-criticism reader, which was published by Cambridge University, the Cambridge Introduction to Literature and the Environment. Eco-criticism has, in fact, in many ways transformed literary criticism by bringing up environmental concerns such as climate change, climate crisis, sustainability, social and eco-justice or ecological justice, and the ways literary and cultural texts represent the natural world. This is a very now developing kind of criticism, or this kind of criticism merged activism with theory. Tayeb Salih's depictions of his selected cities, the anthology contains 2 books, 12 cities from the east and 9 from the west, 9 western cities and 12 eastern cities. In many ways, they lend themselves to eco-critical approach and eco-critical readings. The merging of nature, for instance, and nature and culture or nurture, the rivers, the mountains, the valleys, the weather, the statues, even the statues are presented in a specific way. They are being humanized. Humans and non-humans, language and sustainability. For example, he talks about the indigenous people and the naming and labeling. And of course, the cities also contain some sort of post-colonial criticism. For example, he criticized the labeling, the naming of colonialists, because they rename the cities and the places and the countries they control, they have colonized. Now let us see how this can be thought in the features of the cities. Let us start by this quote from Tayeb Salih's Eastern cities. That is, the cities are unique in their own way. للمدن تفرد وحديث. The collection, the 2 books. You do not actually enter a city, but in fact, you get immersed into your own self, your own world, penetrating deep into your inner territories. This small quote can tell us a lot about Tayeb Salih's perspective in writing about the cities. So it's not just a matter of entering a city. You enter into yourself. You go deep into yourself. You reflect on yourself. And so there is this connection between the external and the internal, the inner, the inside, and the outside. Again, here we are reminded of the relationship between fiction and non-fiction in Tayeb Salih's writing. The anthology about cities are unique, each telling a different tale. The 2 books utilize a variety of strategies, methods, and techniques to construct and reshape these cities or the reality in a specific way. For example, in the defamiliarization and estrangement are very much used in these cities. Interconnectedness of history. There is a lot of history, but the history itself is not presented as historians present it or talk about it. people are also presented in a specific way. The heroes, the real and mythological characters and elements. For example, in Sydney, and there is a very interesting, there is in fact a range of interesting stories about the Aborigines. You can also find travelogue literature, travel literature. You also find post-colonial critiques, elements of power in naming and renaming places and things. For example, he talks about the fact that many places in Australia have been relabeled and have been renamed. There is also juxtaposition, bringing fiction and non-fiction elements. There is intertextuality in these cities. A very good example is when there is a comparison is and contrast is drawn between Tayeb Salih's story with Hamid's Dawn Palm Tree, the Hyphini, the scientific name, Domatut Hamid, with Paris Eiffel Tower, as described by Barthes, the French writer Barthes. There are various ways in which these are compared and contrasted. For example, both of them reflect, they are symbolic cultural implications. They have symbolic cultural implications such as resilience, firmness, mystery, timelessness, and deep-rootedness. Although, of course, the tower is artificial and the tree is natural, but there is a lot of comparison between the two. This can be viewed as part of intertextuality. It's really interesting. Another sort of intertextuality appears in the description of the rivers, Eastern and Western rivers, and their sociocultural, literary, historical, philosophical, mythological, spiritual, and ecological implications. The rivers mentioned include the Volga, the Danube, the Rhine, the Thames, the Seine rivers, along with some American rivers such as Hudson and Potomac River, with Indian rivers such as, of course, the Ganges, and Arab African rivers such as the Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, and so on and so forth. The depiction of the rivers, these rivers are depicted in a very interesting and stunning way. They are constantly being depicted as unique, distinct, with their own will and their own agency, identities, and of course, cultural and literary implications, alongside signaling important aspects of global biodiversity, biocultural diversity. The depiction enhances sustainability, not only environmental sustainability, but also sociocultural and spiritual sustainability, and challenges dominant anthropocentric, human-centered narratives and discourses about nature and the physical environment. You can also find poets, writers, musicians from different countries and epochs, also contrasted in a very specific way, talked about, compared, and contrasted. They all become part and parcel of the whole process of the city representation. Each city's tale is presented and told in an interconnected, complex, non-linear, unfamiliar, interwoven, multi-voiced, critical way, combining historical, realistic, and imaginative aspects. In conclusion, Tayeb Salih cities are unique in their own way. They are sui generis, constructed, shaped, and reshaped by a variety of complex strategies as being distinct cities, dynamic, diverse, critical, polyphonic, humanized, and contributing hugely to the environmental and ecological, social, cultural, and spiritual sustainability of the world. By so doing, Tayeb Salih proves once again his greatness as an unrivaled, enormously skillful, and timeless writer. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conference and the presenters and the audience. Thank you very much.
For taking part and for enlightening talk.